One of the first sentences you see on the new Dietary Guidelines website, after the slogan, "Real food starts here," is this: better health begins on your plate, not in your medicine cabinet. I agree with this. To improve our health the right way, we need to be looking to our foods and how we build our plates, instead of relying on pills and treatments. But how do we get to the best long-term health? Is it truly through these recently released guidelines and through a carton of whole milk, a piece of steak, and a stalk of broccoli, as portrayed on the realfood.gov website? Let's find out. In this episode, we'll take a deeper dive into the new dietary guidelines for Americans and look at 3 more key things you need to know about them to inform your own health. We'll touch on protein and what the guidelines say about vegan and vegetarian diets. I want to help you have the best health moving forward into this new year. Let's go! Welcome to the Plant-Based Eating Made Easy podcast. I'm your host, Anna Zinn, plant-based registered dietitian and transition coach. Hi friend, do you want to regain your health with plant-based eating but feel overwhelmed and lost about how to do it? Do you feel it'll be hard to change your meat-heavy diet and impossible with working, running the home, or chasing after the grandkids? If so, you're in the right place. Here you'll find simple strategies, clear nutrition guidance, and practical tips to help you thrive plant-powered with more energy. So if you're ready to ditch the guesswork and transform your health the stress-free way, cozy up now with a hot cup of tea or listen while you walk, and let me show you how doable plant-based eating can be. Let's do this. Friend, I want to help you enjoy an active, vibrant life with more meaning and connection with those you love around you. But I know that you need to feel and be your best in order to live that out. So if health problems like high blood sugars, high cholesterol, or joint pain are standing in your way, let's tackle them together using the power of whole plant-based foods. Send me an email at healthnow@plantnourish.com or use the contact options provided in the show notes. I want to support you with personalized guidance and strategies so you can transform your health and body to be the best version of you. Let's work on reaching your health and weight goals together with optimal nutrition and build a plant-powered diet lifestyle you love. Let's connect. By now, you've likely already heard about the new Dietary Guidelines for Americans released earlier this year. And there's been so much talk about them on TV, social media, and websites that it's hard to know what to believe. We all know diet is crucial to health and healing. Hippocrates, the father of Western medicine, knew it because a saying from him goes, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." Yet, there are so many foods in this world. Is it just eating any foods that will bring health? Intuitively, we know that this is not the case. Some foods will bring more health over the long term than others. An example would be eating a fast food combo meal versus a salad. So what's the best way to eat to build the most optimal long-term health? And will these new dietary guidelines for Americans get us there? Let's find out. In the first episode of this series, I highlighted recommendations made within the main guidelines document that were strong and definitely worth supporting. Then we touched on the first of 2 key things you should know about them. The fact that not all real foods provide the same long-term health benefits, and that mixed messages about saturated fat exist within the guidelines. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, I would suggest pausing this one and listening to that first. This way, you'll have more context as we delve further into these guidelines. Now let's look at 3 other key things you should know about these new dietary guidelines for Americans. Here's an important one. In the area of protein, more is not necessarily better. Let me explain. The new dietary guidelines gives a protein serving goal of 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. It also suggests that this amount is adjusted as needed based on one's individual caloric requirements. In considering these suggested protein goals, though, we need to remember that a person's individual estimated protein needs are based on many factors. These include, but are not limited to, a person's age, stage of life, activity level, diagnosed health conditions, their weight status, and body mass index. If a person is overweight or obese, then that person's estimated protein needs would likely need to be adjusted further and be based on adjusted body weight instead of actual weight. So there are many factors that need to be taken into account. Here are a few other key points I want to make. First, this recommended protein serving goal is much higher than the RDA for protein, which is 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. This recommended dietary allowance, or RDA, is the average daily dietary intake level that's adequate to meet the nutrient requirement of nearly all, 97 to 98% of healthy individuals in a particular gender and life stage group. And in the determination of the estimated average requirement, and hence the RDA, reduction of disease risk was considered, along with many other health parameters. So an RDA of 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight is still more than sufficient to meet the needs of most adults. For healthy older adults over 65 years of age, there have been recommendations made for a slightly higher protein intake by some expert panels. For example, the PROT-AGE International Study Group has suggested an average daily protein intake of at least 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight for these individuals. Yet, this is still just slightly above the established RDA for protein. And more is not necessarily better, especially when it comes to protein and older adults. In 2017, a study was published in the Journal of Nutrition, Health and Aging that analyzed individual participant data and a meta-analysis of 8 randomized controlled trials to determine the impact of protein intake or amino acid supplementation on muscle mass and strength in elderly people. What researchers found was that there was no significant positive effects resulting from protein or amino acid supplementations alone on increasing muscle mass or strength in predominantly healthy elderly people. In another systematic review of 15 studies, the study authors stated that so far, only resistance exercise has shown any real benefit in improving muscle mass in older people. In the published results, the study authors concluded that protein or essential amino acid supplementation did not significantly improve the effects of progressive resistance exercise training in older adults. We also need to consider the potential for excessive protein intakes in accelerating aging. So from a longevity perspective, if your goals are to extend life, then protein restriction, and in particular methionine restriction, may be a smart strategy to adopt. All this is food for thought. Here's a fourth key thing you need to know. Plant-based diets can be both healthful and nutritious when planned well. In the last section of the main guidelines document, it is stated that vegetarian diets often fall short in 4 nutrients, while vegan diets show broader shortfalls in nutrients. A list of 15 nutrients of concern was then given, which included protein, magnesium, and vitamin E. If this was true, that would definitely be alarming. But here's part of the reason for these statements made. In the appendix to the guidelines, it is stated that food pattern modeling was used to suggest potential shortfalls in the nutrients among vegetarian and vegan patterns. And to elicit a vegan food pattern, animal products like eggs and dairy from the vegetarian diet meal plan were removed in the food pattern modeling protocol. But what didn't happen was this. Prior to analysis, there was no addition of any plant-based foods or portion adjustments made to the remaining foods, to compensate for the removal of these animal-based foods from the meal pattern. So it is not surprising to me then that inadequacies of many nutrients were found from this analysis. Personally, a shortfall of so many nutrients has never occurred in the clients or students I've worked with, nor is this what is shown in research studies. In a large systematic review of 141 studies published in the journal Nutrients in 2021 by Newfinger and colleagues, the nutrient intake and status of adults consuming plant-based diets was compared to that of meat eaters. In this review, researchers saw that magnesium, folate, vitamin C, E, fiber, and polyunsaturated fatty acid intake were higher in vegetarians and vegans compared to meat eaters, and that though the protein intake was lower, it was still well within recommended intake levels. In the new EVA study, researchers analyzed dietary intake and blood biomarkers in 258 adults using 5-day food records, serum blood tests, body composition analyses, and urine sample collections. These participants were following either a vegan diet, vegetarian diet, flexitarian diet, or omnivorous regular diet. The results, published in 2022, show that vegans had the highest concentrations of biotin, folate, and vitamin C compared to the other groups. The participants following a vegan diet also had the lowest total cholesterol, LDL, and triglyceride levels of all the groups, while those on an omnivorous or regular diet had the highest total cholesterol, LDL, and triglyceride levels. In the conclusion, the study authors stated thus, and I quote, "The new EVA study confirms the position of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics that adequately planned vegetarian diets are healthy, nutritionally adequate, and may provide health benefits in the prevention and treatment of non-communicable diseases." So in reality, plant-based diets can be healthful and nutritionally adequate when planned well, with only the need for some targeted supplementation, such as that of vitamin B12. Actually, 3 key nutrients that may need supplementation in a plant-based diet are also nutrients those on a regular diet need to be mindful of too, and potentially supplement. If you'd like to learn more about this, go to episode 119, which I'll link in the show notes for you. In fact, in the systematic review of 141 studies I referenced earlier, Newfinger and colleagues saw that meat eaters were at risk of inadequate intakes of a few specific nutrients, such as fiber, polyunsaturated fatty acids, alpha-linolenic acid, or ALA, folate, vitamin D, vitamin E, calcium, and magnesium. In the new EVA study, researchers also found in their analysis that for the participants eating an omnivorous diet, intakes of dietary fiber, polyunsaturated fatty acids, potassium, vitamin D, and vitamin E were lower than recommended. This leads us to a 5th key thing to keep in mind. How and what you eat on any dietary pattern matters. Regardless of what kind of eating pattern you're on, it is important to be mindful of what and how you are eating. I mentioned before about the importance of choosing the vegan and plant-based foods you eat wisely. If your diet is centered mostly around highly processed vegan commercial food products like white bread, sugary cookies, potato chips, vegan desserts, and white pasta, you will likely have more nutrient inadequacies. But if your meals are centered around minimally processed and unprocessed whole plant-based foods like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts, seeds, and lentils, you'll be much more likely to have an adequate intake of many micronutrients and macronutrients. So there can be a big difference between a processed foods-heavy vegan diet and a whole food plant-based diet. This is a key reason why research studying the impact of plant-based diets on health conditions now often analyze the foods eaten by participants more carefully, so they can better compare outcomes based on plant-based diet quality. So remember this, how you eat and what you eat really matters to your health and nutrition, and even more so if you are eating a plant-based diet. So today in this episode, we took a deeper dive into the new 2025 to 2030 Dietary Guidelines for Americans. And I shared 3 more key things you need to know. The first is this: more is not necessarily better, especially when it comes to the area of protein. Secondly, plant-based diets can be both healthful and nutritious when planned well. And thirdly, how and what you eat on any dietary pattern matters. But what I've shared with you today is still just the tip of the pyramid. There's a lot more I could unpack on the new Dietary Guidelines for Americans. I hope, though, that you will leave with this key takeaway point. It's important to critically evaluate any piece of professional or governmental guidance given and investigate the background scientific rationale and reasoning behind them. Also, here's an action step you can take. When evaluating and deciding on a diet pattern to follow, ask yourself, which dietary pattern would provide me the best long-term health outcomes in terms of lower chronic disease risk and promote true longevity into the future? I hope this question will lead you to more intentionally explore and consider a plant-powered way of eating. Thank you so much for listening. If this podcast has inspired, encouraged, or helped you in some way to transform your health, I would love to hear about it. Please take 30 seconds to rate and leave a written review on Apple Podcasts to let me know. It will encourage me so much to hear how this podcast has positively impacted and made a difference in your journey towards wellness. And share about this podcast with a friend or loved one so we can all thrive in the best health. Remember, plant-based eating can be easy and doable. See you in the next episode, my friend.